So the body wants to deal with this by producing these symptoms of the common cold, right? The coughing, the sneezing, the congestion, to try to discharge all of these waste products and toxins and get them out of the body so that we can come back to our normal optimal state of health. Should we really be treating colds, or are we thinking about them all wrong? In this video, I'll cover why our bodies produce the symptoms of the common cold and how to best address them for the whole family. As a naturopathic doctor, I love helping patients understand why their body does what it does and how to best support the innate healing wisdom of the body. In the case of the common cold, colds are not the problem. They're the cure. They're a wise, adaptive response by the body to return to a state of normal health. For that reason, we don't want to treat colds in the conventional sense, which usually means suppressing the symptoms. We want to support colds and support what they're naturally trying to do in the body to help us return to a state of normal health. This is a follow-up video to the last one I did on some of the factors that tend to cause the common cold, so be sure to check that one out too. So let's start out with why our bodies produce the symptoms of the common cold. Typical symptoms are a runny or stuffy nose, that congestion, coughing, sneezing. You may have watery eyes. You may or may not have a low-grade fever as well. Now, all of these symptoms are an attempt by the body to clear the respiratory tract of any irritants, pollutants, pathogens, or toxins. The act of coughing and sneezing help to expel any of these products out of the body so that they don't linger and cause more problems later on. And all that mucus and congestion is there to also trap any of those irritants or toxins and carry them up and out of the body. We want to get that junk out of the body. Let's check out a diagram for better understanding. So here in this diagram, we can see that we have a state of normal health, our normal state of health, and we can see how disturbing factors come in and cause disruption of our normal function. Now, these disturbing factors we covered a bit in the last video, but they can include anything that weakens our terrain, our internal environment, or makes us more susceptible to be more overrun or overwhelmed by the symptoms of the common cold. So some of these things could be environmental or dietary toxins that accumulate in the body and the body wants to try to get them up and out. These can be lack of proper sleep, which is when we do our best healing work. This can be factors that add more toxins or add to immune suppression or weakening, such as high intake of sugar during the winter months and the winter holidays, intake of ultra-processed foods or your personal food intolerances and different indulgences, alcohol, caffeine, these different things. Now, looking at the chart, as we have this disruption of normal function, the body seeks to return us back to our normal state of health by producing a reaction. And this reaction seeks to discharge any of the insults to the body or to clear out the effects of some of these disturbing factors in its wise attempt to bring us back to normal health. So in the case of the common cold, we have our normal health, we have disturbing factors that may have weakened the terrain, and now adding on top of that, we have an exposure to an opportunistic pathogen, a virus or bacteria. And with the cold weather, maybe these viruses are sticking around longer, and now we have disruption of normal function from a variety of factors. So the body wants to deal with this by producing the reaction, these symptoms of the common cold. Right, the coughing, the sneezing, the congestion, to try to discharge all of these waste products and toxins and get them out of the body so that we can come back to our normal optimal state of health. Understanding this better allows us to see how we really want to support this process. When we have a reaction, in this case the common cold, and we have these symptoms of discharge, we want to support that body's wise response to discharge and clear these away from the body so that we can come back to our normal state. So we want to support the body and not necessarily think about treating the cold, which typically means to suppress those symptoms of discharge. So looking at the expanded diagram, what happens if we suppress this wise response or reaction by the body? So as you can see, instead of allowing that reaction, the common cold in this case, to undergo its discharge process and return to normal health, if we instead suppress the symptoms of the common cold, like we take Dayquil or NyQuil and try to stop the mucus and try to stop the coughing and sneezing, now we're pushing or suppressing that reaction. And as you can see, this can cause a more chronic reaction or a deeper problem later on. So in the case of colds, if you suppress a cold, if you suppress the symptoms of the common cold because you want to get back to work the next day or get the kids to school, or maybe you just are not aware of colds being a wise response by the body, and yes, the symptoms can be uncomfortable. So all these things are going on. We take a substance to suppress the reaction and the symptoms. What happens? Well, we might temporarily get rid of the symptoms and have this symptom relief. We can maybe go back to work and carry on with what we need to carry on with. But then not too long later, because the body still had substances and toxins that it was not able to properly release and remove from the body, they don't just disappear. Now we've potentially driven those toxins deeper into the body and now compromise some of our more vital organs. So in this case, with the respiratory tract, these upper respiratory symptoms where congestion and responses are trying to clear out the respiratory tract and get things up and out of the body, if we push that expression deeper, now we're potentially compromising our deeper vital organs, the lungs. So what some people might notice is not too long later, the symptoms return and now with a vengeance. Or now they're diagnosed with bronchitis or pneumonia or another secondary bacterial infection because the body was not able to fully clear or discharge these irritants earlier on. And oftentimes we have a hard time seeing how these are connected. How can my pneumonia have stemmed from just the little cough and cold and mucus that I had earlier that I already dealt with, right? So understanding how the body normally and naturally works and seeks to restore balance, this can be really insightful for understanding why colds are a really supportive and adaptive response by the body. So looking back at this diagram, if this chronic reaction goes on too long and that's not supported or properly addressed, we can eventually lead to now tissue degeneration. And if this goes on too long, we can see some irreversible changes. However, even with a chronic reaction, you can see the two-way arrows, we can reverse this process and ideally come back to a state where we now have a healthy acute reaction that the body generates to again take us through this discharge process, clear things and toxins out of the body that we can come back to our normal state of health. So in the case of colds, how do we support them instead of treating, if that means suppressing colds instead? First, you always want to think about movement and flow. So hydration is key here, especially in the colder months. It's hard to think about drinking more water and hydrating yourself. It tends to be easier to think to drink water when it's hot outside in the summer. So hydration is key here. So make sure you're drinking clean, filtered water and you're drinking enough water to stay hydrated during the day. You can make sure to add some trace minerals or electrolytes to that water as well. Make sure your cells are nice and hydrated. This not only helps to detoxify and remove toxins from the body, but it also helps to thin that mucus. So when we have this congested picture, it helps to make that mucus less thick and allow it to move and flow more freely, which is what we want, which is what the body's trying to do to clear everything up, out, and away. So room temperature water or warm herbal teas can be very nice and supportive here. For those over the age of 1 year old, you can add some honey, which can be very soothing to the respiratory tract as well. And it also contains antimicrobial properties as well. We also want to think about loosening or clearing any mucus and congestion that's there. This can be done through steam inhalation over a pot of warm water with maybe some eucalyptus essential oil or in a hot shower with the steam that generates, or through using a neti pot. Also, if you live in colder climates and you're using a lot of indoor heat and your home is very warm but dry, adding some moisture to the air by turning on a humidifier can also be very supportive. All of these things are encouraging that mucus to loosen up and to support their flow up and out of the body, right? The mucus is containing all the irritants and pathogens and trapping them so that we can take them out of the body instead of keeping them in or letting them get stuck and causing issues later on. For mucus that's really stick or those really congestive situations, NAC, N-acetylcysteine, is a nice supplement to have on board. Not only is it a precursor to our body's master antioxidant, which is glutathione, but it's also a mucolytic, so it helps to thin that mucus, which is one of the objectives that we like for supporting colds. Hydrotherapy or water therapy can also be very supportive here. So again, for that congestion and a lot of discomfort in the face and the sinuses and the throat, you can use a warm compress. So just a warm, thin towel, hand towel wrung out of warm water, and just apply that to the face and let it sit there. This can help bring more flow and thin some of that congestion and make you feel a little bit more comfortable. A warm compress to the chest can also be supportive, especially if there's a lot of chest congestion. Or you can also do contrast hydrotherapy, which is alternating hot and cold to the chest for more deeper circulation and stimulation of immune function. This typically looks like a larger towel wrung out of hot water, placed on the bare chest for 3 minutes, alternated by a cold towel wrung out of cold water to the chest for 30 seconds, and do this back and forth, hot towel for 3 minutes, 30 seconds of cold. Do that for 3 to 5 rounds, always end on the cold water. Another traditional naturopathic therapy is called the warming sock treatment, where you put cotton socks wrung out of cold tap water onto warmed feet and cover those now wet cotton socks with dry wool socks that are thicker to help insulate the heat. And then go to bed covered up in your covers. And this promotes blood flow and circulation, which also stimulates the immune system and also helps to pull any congestion from the head and face area down as the body seeks to bring that flow down to the feet to try to warm up the feet. So all of these things can help naturally and gently support the symptoms of the common cold and support the inherent wisdom of the body instead of overtly suppressing the symptom expression. If you recall back on the chart, we also not only want to support the discharge process, we also want to stop any disturbing factors from continuing to stress the system. So through the diet, that means being mindful of not consuming excess sugar or too many ultra-processed foods and all of the chemicals and contaminants that they contain, as well as your personal food intolerances or foods that you notice tend to bother you that you don't digest well, because the body and the gut has to deal with that. That puts more strain on the body. It generates toxins that can add to systemic inflammation or can also tax the respiratory tract as it seeks to try to expel those toxins from the diet out through the mucus as well. Being mindful of these disturbing factors also means being mindful of how much quality sleep you're getting. Sleep is essential for healing, rest, and recovery. These are, again, our foundations of health. It's also being mindful of how much stress is in our daily lives, whether that's physical stress, mental, or emotional stress. This includes overwork. So when you're getting the signal from your body to rest, or these cold symptoms are particularly hard to ignore, these are all signs that your body is asking for more rest and time to recover. So to wrap up, we talked about the common cold and how it's not the problem in and of itself. It's a solution to the problem. And as we saw from the diagram, the problem is the disturbing factors that weaken our terrain of our body, coupled with an exposure to a virus or bacteria that then encounters an already overburdened or weakened body. And now it's trying to return us to a state of normal health by discharging some of the results and strains on the body, these toxins, these irritants, these pathogens. We took a look at what could happen if we tried to treat colds in the conventional sense, meaning suppressing the symptoms of the cold, and how this can drive illness deeper and cause more severe problems later on and compromise deeper vital organs. And we also talked about some effective natural ways to support the body in its wise efforts to expel toxins out of the body through the symptoms of the common cold, and how to support this process so that we can have more ease and come back to our normal state of health, hopefully more quickly and with less consequence. Let me know in the comments if you learned something new in this video, and be sure to subscribe to learn more about the wise actions of our body and how to keep you and your family healthy and well. I'm Dr. Jinmi Graham, a holistic naturopathic doctor, and I'll see you next time.